A global provider of network detection and response, Vectra applies AI to all data across your cloud, data center, IoT, and enterprise infrastructure to identify and stop hidden cyber attacks. Gartner has validated this modern approach to stopping cyber attacks with its SOC Visibility Triad, which names 3 critical technologies that are essential to every security operations center. 1 is Security Information and Event Management, or SIEM. The second is Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR. And third is Network Detection and Response, NDR. A SIEM addresses logs, EDR addresses endpoints, and NDR addresses the network. Our goal at Vectra is to help you detect and respond faster to advancing cyber threats and apply AI to create SOC efficiencies that are impossible for humans alone to achieve. Vectra, security that thinks. A global provider of network detection and response, Vectra applies AI to all data across your cloud, data center, IoT, and enterprise infrastructure to identify and stop hidden cyber attacks. Gartner has validated this modern approach to stopping cyber attacks with its SOC Visibility Triad, which names 3 critical technologies that are essential to every security operations center. 1 is Security Information and Event Management, or SIEM. The second is Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR. And third is Network Detection and Response, NDR. A SIEM addresses logs, EDR addresses endpoints, and NDR addresses the network. Our goal at Vectra is to help you detect and respond faster to advancing cyber threats and apply AI to create SOC efficiencies that are impossible for humans alone to achieve. Vectra, security that thinks. A global provider of network detection and response, Vectra applies AI to all data across your cloud, data center, IoT, and enterprise infrastructure to identify and stop hidden cyber attacks. Gartner has validated this modern approach to stopping cyber attacks with its SOC Visibility Triad, which names 3 critical technologies that are essential to every security operations center. 1 is Security Information and Event Management, or SIEM. The second is Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR. And third is Network Detection and Response, NDR. A SIEM addresses logs, EDR addresses endpoints, and NDR addresses the network. Our goal at Vectra is to help you detect and respond faster to advancing cyber threats and apply AI to create SOC efficiencies that are impossible for humans alone to achieve. Vectra, security that thinks. A global provider of network detection and response, Vectra applies AI to all data across your cloud, data center, IoT, and enterprise infrastructure to identify and stop hidden cyber attacks. Gartner has validated this modern approach to stopping cyber attacks with its SOC Visibility Triad, which names 3 critical technologies that are essential to every security operations center. 1 is Security Information and Event Management, or SIEM. The second is Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR. And third is Network Detection and Response, NDR. A SIEM addresses logs, EDR addresses endpoints, and NDR addresses the network. Our goal at Vectra is to help you detect and respond faster to advancing cyber threats and apply AI to create SOC efficiencies that are impossible for humans alone to achieve. Vectra, security that thinks.
Hi, good morning and welcome everyone. Good morning to Australia audience as well. My name is Mavis. I'm the Regional Marketing Manager from Netpoleon. Thank you for taking the time to join us for today's Threat Detection and Response, a fireside chat with Globe Group. So I think without further delay, just a little bit housekeeping before we get started. This webinar will be recorded throughout the section for internal use only. We will be muted all dial-in participants to ensure the section without any interruption. If you have any question, you can pose your question in the Q&A box at any time, so we will bring them up during Q&A section at the end. Or you can raise your hand then we will unmute you to speak. So don't be shy at the Q&A section. It's a good chance for you to ask from the expert. For today's section, we are giving away some e-vouchers as a token of appreciation to express our appreciation for your support, as each country is giving different types of token of appreciation. So after today's section, our respective marketing team will be in touch with you and send you the token of appreciation by email in a few weeks' time. And also we have a short survey later. We will flash the QR code and link at the end of the section. So please have to fill up and give your feedback to us to keep improving and hear from you. Okay, here is the agenda for today. Opening remarks followed by our fireside chat with Globe Group. And we have Q&A section before the end of today's section. And we have three speakers for today. Mr. Willet is from Netpoleon Group, and he is our Vectra Regional Product Manager. And we are very honored for the opportunity for having Mr. Anton Reynaldo Bonifacio as our special guest. Mr. Anton is in his 8th year as the Chief Information Security Officer for Globe Group in the Philippines, where he has built, grown, and continues to develop one of the largest captive cybersecurity and privacy teams in the country. And of course, we have Mr. Chris Fisher, the Director of Security Engineering at PJ from Vectra AI. He is the Head of Security Engineering for Vectra AI in the Asia Pacific and Japan markets. Chris has over 15 years of cybersecurity experience from practitioner through to strategic advisor for large organizations. He has a vast experience in SCADA environments, working in the mining and energy sectors for a number of years as well. And now, without further delay, we will turn the time over to Vectra Regional Product Manager, Mr. Willet to kickstart for today's sections.
Thanks, Mavis. Hi, good morning, guys. Right, thank you so much for attending today's call. Right, so let me just show my screen. All right. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for today's time, your precious time, right? Attending our today's event, right? So I'm Willet, the Regional Product Manager for in Netpoleon for Vectra across the Southeast Asia, right? So just to let me share a little bit on regards of our milestone, right? Netpoleon is actually our distributor across the region, and then throughout the years itself, right, we have established ourselves in quite a number of countries, which include Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, and Malaysia as well, right? So in 2017, actually, in fact, we are actually acquired by Macunica Networks. Yes, and apart from that itself, right, we have also established our distribution ship, right, in Australia and India, Southeast, India and New Zealand as well, right? So just a glance of who is Macunica. We call it Macunica because it's actually a Japan name itself. So just a glance of Macunica, it has been in the market for about 49 years, and then they have got about 3,500 employees across the world, and then it's a $5.5 billion company, right? And then there's 23 countries and 85 offices around the world. right? So as Netpoleon as a group, right, we does cover a few countries, right, across Southeast Asia, which includes Singapore, Australia, Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Myanmar, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. So in total, we have got about 414 headcounts. And we always believe on this, we always believe technical is actually part of a very important role in our company itself. Therefore, 50% of our headcount, right, is actually technical staffs, right? So these are some of the product range, right, across the region, which we carry, you know, and we are actually pretty proud to say that, you know, we do carry Vectra as one of our core product, right, across the Southeast Asia itself. Okay, so these are some of the awards which we have attained, right, throughout the years. We are BSafe certified, and we do have CREST certification in 2019, and some other good awards, right, which we have actually attained. Okay, so this is something pretty important, right? So why Netpoleon? Right, we do have a team of technical support, right, which we can have the expertise to help the customers, you know, in terms of like consultation, proposals, of solutions, you know, and we will be able to actually do architectural design as well. And apart from that, we are able to do proof of concept, you know, for customers. And also we have a team of expertise, right, doing professional service such as the implementation, the rack and stack, you know, and customization, migration, and kind of commissioning, right? So thereafter, right, we also do have the post sales kind of support services, which would include those preventive maintenance and then on-site troubleshooting and so on and so forth, right? And our team is also capable to do technology and product training as well. So, and also apart from that, right, we do have a lot of marketing support yeah, across the region. And yeah, so we also does cover, right, the whole regional presence itself, right, across Southeast Asia, including Myanmar, Cambodia, and also India, New Zealand, and Australia as well. So, any questions for me for now? If not, with no further delay, I will hand over the mic to Chris Fisher from Vectra and Anton from Globe. Right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Willet, and thank you, Netpoleon team, and a big special thank you to Anton for joining us today. Really looking forward to this session, and hopefully everyone who's jumped on will get some benefit out of this. So thanks for joining us today, Anton. Really do appreciate it. Did you want to start by just telling us a little bit about Globe Group? Because, you know, some of the people on the call might not be aware of just how many different industries you guys cover.
Sure. So hi, everyone. First of all, again, you know, happy to be here. So the Globe Group, Globe Group is actually Globe Telecom. We're currently one of the largest, if not the largest, at least for mobile telecommunications companies in the Philippines. Roughly $3 billion in revenue, 90 million customers. Over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years, 6 years, I think we've gone through a shift of ensuring, you know, there's so many telcos out there that keeps on talking about wanting to go beyond telco. And I think through the, you know, vision of our CEO, Ernest, you know, I think we've finally been able to do that, I would say over the past, I guess just 24 months. You know, part of it too is because of the pandemic, right? So we've rebranded ourselves into the Globe Group just a couple of months ago, just because now, for example, one of the largest first double unicorns in the Philippines as far as valuations, for example, which is GCash or Mint, is part of that portfolio company that we have and own as a subsidiary that we spun off. So that's GCash. We have a health tech business that is also starting to pick up, which is in ConsultMD and Health Now. We have a startup incubation business, which is 917 Ventures, where we have, you know, different smaller companies that like Pure Goal in retail. We have a manpower company in Asticom. So I think the portfolio has now expanded that, even from a security operations perspective, I guess just to put that all into figure, we cover around 21,000 or, even more, 25,000 plus number of assets that includes servers and endpoints. And in fact, 13,000 of those are already outside of the telco, right? So I think just the business in itself is starting to grow. So we're both an old and slow telecommunications company, but at the same time, we're a little bit in fast, agile, I would say a cutting edge app-based API company that's more, I guess, young and feverish, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've got a really diverse, I guess it's a real challenge when you look at from a security perspective where you invest and how you move forwards. And I think, if we look back over, Globe Telecom, but also, the last 24 months, you guys seem to kind of push the boundaries a little bit when it comes to security. And, walk us through the challenges of that, because I'm sure we've got lots of people on here that have, large organizations such as yourselves that, you can have challenges trying to bring in new security technologies and really drive into that. I know when we look at traditional telco worlds, cloud is kind of creeping in for a lot of areas. But if I look at finance, especially in different regions, cloud is becoming massive. And the pandemic kind of accelerated that. I get the comment all the time, hey, we had this cloud transformation strategy that was going to take 5 years and we had to deliver it in 6 months for the pandemic. So walk us through how that's been for yourselves.
I think the great advantage that we've had, even as a telco, is that we started our cloud adoption journey very early on. I believe we're still currently the largest AWS customer in the Philippines, for example. We started our cloud first journey sometime like 2016, 2017. So even when the pandemic hit, we were pretty much ready, which I think is the good thing. Even for us from a security operations perspective, we have been adopting a lot of cloud first security products just to be able to ensure that we can keep aligned. But that said, it's not all rosy, right? For example, even though we're one of the first and I think still largest Google Apps customers, our challenge from a security perspective is that sure, there's this cloud infrastructure, but at the same time, really just from a telco, you still have that very legacy and old type of system, right? That's why, I keep on saying, we're kind of, although technically telco is not OT, it almost feels like OT just because, there are still a lot of asset servers that you can't touch, you can't patch. So how do you handle them? How do you get visibility in them? How do you get the ability to incident response or breach detection? So being able to juggle this type of environment, I think is, really part of the challenge. And like I said, adding fintech, right? Like our fintech company, for example, highly containerized environment, all in the Alibaba cloud, because it is partly owned by Ant Financial. So that's another challenge out there, and being able to marry both, because like I said, from a security operations perspective, we are converged in that sense.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to kind of the topic of today where we talk about NDR. And I think a lot of people would see NDR is either something new, they may have only just recently heard about it. You guys made an investment into NDR a little while ago. So walk us through why you went down that path.
Out of sheer need, just because, as I mentioned, really the pain point that happened is, as we were able to expand the SOC coverage, we started to have challenges where, of course, the main, I would say, heart of the SOC at the time was really the EDR, right? So we are a CrowdStrike Falcon customer. I believe one of the largest in APAC, where we have 21,000 actually endpoints rolled out with a Falcon EDR, and it's been great for us. But the challenge started to surface where there would be incidents, for example, that we try to do, or hunts, for example, that we're running, and then there's simply not enough telemetry or visibility into stuff because there are certain endpoints that we can't put the EDR in, right? So whether these are old legacy telco stuff that the OS is not compatible. There are parts of our telco network, so we are a Huawei environment, for example, or these mixed, but there are, for example, Linux servers that have custom kernels where the EDR would not work. So as we do a lot of the IR or even just hunts, there were still blind spots. And realistically, we just couldn't even put in whether that's Splunk, pulling the logs, it wasn't enough. So that's why we had to look at, say, hey, you know what? Okay, if there's an EDR, there's got to be something else. So running into Vectra saying, hey, you know what? NDR is the solution. I'm not running the marketing materials that, oh, you know what, it's the TRIAD. It really is out of sheer necessity. So that's where we said, hey, you know what, into these areas and spots, we got to put in a solution there so that we can still do the, I guess, sensing and response that we need. And the funny thing is, it's not just on the legacy environment, right? Because even in the more, I would say, like we mentioned, cutting edge environments where there will also be some challenges in pulling logs or putting in the EDR, we had to put in the NDR in those segments. We are a highly segmented environment from the perspective that that's also one of the things that we had to put in, is that micro segmentation is a big principle. Our network used to be so flat, and that's where a lot of the challenges arise, I'm sure, as everybody knows, right? So being able to, put in the proper sensing in a highly segmentized environment, I think is really where the NDR use case shined for us.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, we're very appreciative of the business, but, why did you choose Vectra?
Two things. So number one, of course, so we're a big POC, POV geek type of organization. We jumped straight to it. So I think the willingness to ensure that, we can run the POC and POV fast was, one of the great things. And, we did realize it very immediately that, hey, the tech can do it, right? But I think outside of that is just the alignment and culture for both companies, both Vectra and Netpoleon, that helped us out. Like just to this day, one of my biggest gripes sometimes with partners is that, the moment that the deal is done, they're nowhere to be found. The next time I talk to them, it's going to be, when, there's renewals, right? But the relationship with Vectra from the beginning, pre-sales, post-sales, has been there. I mean, which is why we're in this Zoom call together, I guess, Chris. The industry partnership has helped a lot. There's so many things that both companies were able to do for the team, whether that's onboarding, whether that's fun and games, as far as some of the activities that we did that really allowed us to, I would say, make it easier to adopt the technology and operationalize it, right? So I think the customer success, I guess, principle and value in ensuring that we're able to actually maximize the investment. I think that ongoing journey in a relationship, that we weren't really just left alone after we boarded the ship, is one of those biggest things that I value the most.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great to hear, obviously, that it was, I guess, when we first engaged, the pandemic had really just hit. Like I remember I actually had tickets to jump on a plane to go to the Philippines to see you guys, and it all got squashed. So, it was one of those things that we were all kind of fumbling through. How do we do this on Zoom calls and everything else? And I think engagement with your team has been fantastic on the way through. But not a lot of people know this about Vectra, but our number one principle is what we do with our customers. So it's really good to hear, your response to that, coming back to it, because for us, it's really key and critical. And obviously, having Netpoleon around has been fantastic for us, because they've been able to be there and nurture along the way through. It's interesting you kind of talked about this SOC triad and SIM, and we, if we looked at SIM a while ago, I think everyone kind of went, this was the number one detection platform that we used to use. We bring all the logs in, we aggregate everything, we build our use cases, and then we go from there. Can you walk us through a little bit? You've got your EDR, you've got your NDR, you've got your SIM. Like, how's that journey matured for you and your SOC? You've got a lot of coverage. The team that you have, not a lot of people are aware of this. It's not a massive team, right? So managing those security incidents that come through, how does that all play together?
Well, I guess just first thing is that we never, like, to us, we're pragmatic in the approach, right? To us, we're mission focused. So we didn't really get carried away with saying, hey, SOAR is going to replace SIM, or like, NDR is going to replace whatever, or like, everything is going to be replaced by XDR. Like, to us, hey, we got to look at the tools that we have and what works. So we are aligned with that, philosophy and principle of that triad. It's true. So for us, the SIM still holds a great function, more around, a lot of it. So the SIM and the SOAR kind of like, we look at it as a similar stack to a degree, right? Just because, sure, we use the SOAR for a lot of the, I would say, things that we can automate, whether that's low-level detection, so on and so forth. We try to do it there. But of course, like, more of the advanced IR or threat hunting that we got to do, a lot of it is actually still within the SIM as a dashboard, right? So we try to still do a lot there. We leverage, so we're a Splunk customer. We leverage a lot on their agent to do a lot of, I would say, scripting and whatnot. And then, being able to then pull, it's not even really just pulling data, but, whether it's pulling data from the NDR, pulling data from the EDR, but it is always a jumping point, right? Like, I think the whole single pane of glass thing is more going to be on a surface level. But the moment that you guys actually have to do complex incident responses or hunts, there's really not one, right? Sometimes, we have to go to the Vectra dashboard, right? We have to be able to dig deep. Sometimes we have to go back to the EDR dashboard, so on and so forth. So that's why I like the framing of the triad, because I think it's really going to be something like that for us, that, you can't really abandon one or the other. I think what's more important is being able to consolidate and rationalize towards three key parts of their platforms, right? So that's what we're doing, for example, in Globe, where we're saying, hey, if it's SIM, let's make sure we have one SIM that runs across the entire group, telco, fintech, health tech. That way it's all uniform. Same thing, if it's NDR, if it's Vectra, then let's make sure that we have all of these sensing capabilities across the board. And same thing for EDR, that I don't think it's possible to consolidate your security stack into one technology, but you got to be able to trim down what your vertical and towers are, and then commit to that particular partner. That way you also kind of ride onto their vision with years to come.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, where we look at it as a business, it's a critical point to understand not only that, hey, there's the SIM there and it's going to give you that capability, but the fact that you're pivoting back into it. And it's, it's interesting. I hear a lot from other CISOs around, the SIM is kind of the surface level, and that's where we're at. And there was challenges with doing that. And we look at it, and you've got a really, really, I would say, a very mature SOAR capability today. There's a lot of integrations. You've got a lot of automation going on there. And we kind of hear in this SOAR world that it was almost the promise of SIM years ago. It sounds like it's kind of repeating itself. Hey, this is where all the integrations are going to come from, and this is where we're going to, build this out. Do you want to walk through, I guess, where the SOAR has been beneficial, and then how is it that the tool sets that you're getting from NDR and EDR really help feed that and drive the outcome?
I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier, right? Although we are one of the largest captive teams, at least just from the context of the Philippines, but just with the sheer scope that we have, of course, the physical resources are never going to be enough. One of the principles that Garrett Silo, he's our senior director for security operations, that he's always wanted to put in place is really just being able to ensure that fidelity is the number one principle as far as alerting is concerned. So what does that mean? It's ensuring that, hey, even if everything that we have generates X million billion number of alerts, we got to be able to narrow that down completely, right? So the SOAR benefit is there in the sense that what we try to do is, well, both SIM and SOAR, but just, our concept and principle is that the less alerts that a person needs to attend to, it's going to be the better, right? So that's what we try to automate, would be a lot of surface level stuff. That way we can, simplify things. But as you mentioned earlier, right, then because what we want to happen is that the analysts that we have, we want them to focus on the complex stuff, right? So that's going down beyond the SIM, that's going directly, for example, like I said, into the NDR, into the EDR, doing really the manual crunching, trying to find things out.
Yeah. So it really comes back to, it's a quality, it's an old saying, but it's quality in equals quality out, right? And it's, it's that level of, are we getting the right detections to be able to isolate and dive into where we need to go? And I think, we've heard a lot about the response stuff in SOAR. I've seen a lot of projects that have failed, quite frankly. And, I think for what you're saying there is basically, if we've got good quality things coming in, it's helped us really deliver those successful projects on the way through.
And more important than quality, like I said, it's that filtering through, right? We actually stole it from, not stole, but they lent it to us, Palo Alto Networks, their internal SOC. Their model is what they call actually a funnel model, right? It's just, you got to be able to ensure that all of, even if it's quality, but if it's too much quality information, you still got to be able to filter that down, right? Almost like a funnel, so that the final output should be very, very few high fidelity alerts that then humans will respond to. And that's the way everybody else, everything. And I think that's where, Vectra helps a lot too, right? With the AI and machine learning and everything else, like being able to create those high fidelity alerts, ensuring that we're only respond to things that are worth responding to with a correlation and whatnot, I think is what helps out.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned the buzzword, so I'm going to dive into that one a little bit. And for everyone off here, we're going off script a little bit, by the way. So you mentioned AI, right? And everyone's talking about it. It is the buzzword in the industry. Obviously, we use it. You went through that process. I'm sure a lot of people on the call would benefit from just your experience. Like, how do you measure what's good AI? I mean, you hear it from everyone. If you look at it at a paper-based evaluation, it all sounds the same. So how do you take that approach to look at it?
Tough question, but to us, like I said, we're mission-based, we're output-based. To us, like I said, it's just two things. Number one, if it helps us allow us to ensure that we're focused on fidelity, that's already one thing, right? Like, that our humans will only need to respond to things that is really of utmost importance and quality. That's number one. Number two is being able to also generate insights that humans can't generate, right? So I think it's finding that, how can both work with each other? I don't think one is essentially going to replace the other, but it's just being able to find out, hey, how can we leverage on both tools so that we're able to maximize the function of each, right? So for example, let's say, we've seen incidents, for example, that AI probably would not have been able to detect, right? Just because it's way too complicated, way too complex. They're talking about nation state. So we needed humans to go through the dirty work, go through the pig pen, get dirty to be able to figure it out. But sometimes too, there are types of attacks where it's so advanced that, no matter how much time you spend rolling in the mud, there's no way we would have figured it out, right? And that's where the reliance on great AI type of detection to say, hey, you know what? They're not going to be able to unveil it all for you, but give you enough signal to say, hey, you know what, you got to look at it, right? So I think it's working between both things and ensuring that you're able to maximize the tools that are available to you and ensuring that, everything is stitched together.
Yeah, and look, I think, the approach that we've taken when it comes to AI is very much, it's not about replacing the analyst. It's very much about helping them. And I think anyone that embarks on a project when it comes to AI, it shouldn't be about replacing. It should be about elevating what they're doing rather than, kind of replacing what the job is that sits behind that. And, we see it a lot and we obviously go through it. So I appreciate sharing that experience. I'm sure there'll be a ton of questions that have come out of just that one answer, because I think it's something that everyone is struggling with. You see all the marketing material, you hear all the promises, but yet how does that deliver? And so, really do appreciate that. But the last question that I had for you today was, given that you have a SOAR, how important is the integration between tools? I know we've kind of seen the industry went through this phase of let's build these security platforms, and for whatever reason, they never quite delivered. And then it was like, let's take best of breed. Like, how important is that integration between your principal vendors?
I mean, if you can't do the integration, then the use case is for naught, right? Because like, we, at least for us, the SOAR was not necessarily meant to replace everything, but it was a way to make things simpler, right? Like I said, things that we could automate, things that we could orchestrate, at least that's less human work to do. That way the humans can focus on more important things, right? If that's supposed to be the use case and it can't integrate, it can't do that orchestration that you need, then it's purposeless, right? So definitely a SOAR will have to be able to ensure that, it's going to fit in your environment well and can do the automation and orchestration that you would like it to do. As long as you're ready coming in knowing that, you're not supposed to automate and orchestrate everything either, right? Because, you're going to lose some quality there as well. Like I said, it's being able to ensure that, hey, get an inventory of your processes, get an inventory of the outcomes that you desire, and then plot accordingly, hey, what should be manual, what should be automated, and how is that going to play off of each other?
Yeah. So we'll open up to Q&A for everyone. I know we've given everyone a bit of time. Normally the Q&A runs over. So we've got a couple that have come in already, Anton. One of them was, do you have a baseline or a standard for your incident response?
Baseline standard in terms of metrics or in terms of process? I'll just answer both. So for metrics, we generally rely on breakout times as far as incident response is concerned. I think the latest numbers that we have is we're close to like 2 to 3 hours overall breakout time, right? So that's from detection to remediation. As far as process, to be frank, we've worked with a lot of different partners to help plot out kind of like, what our IR framework is. We work with Mandiant a lot for that in the past. So there, the baseline of our framework is very Mandiant driven. But of course, over time, just because, like I said, with the uniqueness and complexity of our environment and the difference in our cultures, really, we've of course modified that a bit, but the baseline framework is a Mandiant framework.
So that's a really interesting point. I'm going to just ask another question, because I've heard so many stats, like you talk about your breakout time being 2 to 3 hours, right? A lot of industry stats, I don't know whether it's Gartner or whatever publishers, they talk about attacker dwell time being like 56 days or 80 days. And sometimes that mean time to remediation is in the hundreds of days. So clearly you're a long way ahead of where that is. How how did you start the journey to measure that? Because I think there's still a lot of businesses that are struggling at that step of how do I actually measure this?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, right, because there's so many ways that the metric is either defined or labeled. So number one really is like, look, commit to one. You can even customize it because at the end of the day, it's consistency too, right? Then now that we know how we measure ourselves, that is what allowed us to be able to say, hey, you know what, how can we improve? Because I think if you have not nailed down the metric, and really the nature of the metric, the how and the why, and what's it's supposed to enable for you, then it's the metric is supposed to work for you, or you're not supposed to work for the metric. I think is short of it.
And I think when you look at it, I know obviously from where do you make that technology decision? Strategy, framework, everything. Like, is that underpinned by that metric? Like everything has to come back to that. And if we're not achieving that mission, does that then change the technology focus?
I don't think we're as enslaved to the metric in that sense. I guess the outcomes for us still is, look, it's funny, right? We have these quantitative metrics just to be able to say, at the very least, like, look, are we doing our jobs, right? But at the same time, we are pragmatic, but we do look at qualitative, like even qualitative things, right? That I think as long as we feel that there is progress, as long as we know that, hey, we're not stagnant, that we are able to keep on improving, we don't mind changing the metrics. We don't mind changing the tools and the approach. I think to us, it's all about growth. It's all about improvement. And those things vary, right? Because it's not, at the end of the day, we are a part of an organization, a large organization, right? So it's like I said, there's a lot of feel there, right? The feedback that we get from the different, businesses that we support, the different CEOs that we align with. So there's a lot of relationship factor there too that helps determine, hey, are we able to serve them?
Yeah. We've got another question that came in. It's about SOAR. It says, do you perform SOAR automation based on playbooks or custom rules? And then if so, yes, how much ROI has that helped you improve on?
So both. Sure, there are playbooks, there are custom rules. It's a mix. I would say right now, just because we're still, frankly, at the early stages of our journey too with the SOAR, I would say we're not fully mature. We're not very, very early. So I would still say it's a mix. There's still a heavy reliance on standard playbooks that come with it, but we're starting to get better as far as creating our own playbooks, coming up with a lot more custom rules. On the ROI stuff, to be frank, I've been in Globe for 8 years. I never once had to present to the board an ROI. The way that I've always positioned that is, it's really just part of the cost of operations, right? I think for us, we've always hinged the asks for budget and approval as part of the customer journey. To us, we did not deviate too far from what the Globe culture is. So Globe as a company is very customer centric. So I think the way that we have just, even to this day, the way that we still present updates to the board, for example, as long as we can link it very closely to that, customer narrative, right? That this is all part of customer service. I think it's easy for them to be able to spot that. So luckily, I never had to look at it as in terms of ROI. To us, it's like, look, it just boils down to, are we able to do our jobs?
Yeah. I had one other question here as well. It was, when you look at the whole NDR narrative, you kind of talked about cloud a little bit earlier on. How does that play in cloud? I think a lot of people look at NDR as data center. Hey, it's network. I immediately go back to data center. So how do you look at that when you're thinking, I've got cloud, I've got the telco network, I've got traditional data centers, and then I've got crazy stuff like containerization that you spoke about in LA Cloud.
So for us, the thing is, as I mentioned, we don't look at, I guess, the stack horizontally in that sense, that, hey, okay, the cloud stack is different from the data center stack. Of course, there would be some difference at times, just whether that's challenged with technology. But what we're trying to look at and get better at now is, like I said, we look at the security stack a little bit more vertically. So for example, let's say, if NDR, we got to make sure that it's both, right? It's both for cloud and both for the data center, because if you have it separate, at the end of the day, what we've discovered is, look, attackers are not really going to make that discernment once they're in. When they're moving laterally within your environment, they're not going to be like, oh, you know what, that's cloud. Oh, that's data center. And the approach is going to be different. Sure, maybe the attacks are different, but at the same time, they're going to be out for both, right? So for us, the more unified that view is, the more uniform that view is, to make sure that, hey, you know what, we get the same telemetry, whether that's cloud or that's physical, I think is one of the most important things. Because you know what, if they're all separate, then the humans and even, I guess, automation is going to be spending way too much time just trying to correlate those. And when there's so much disparate data that you're trying to correlate, you know what, there is going to be some things lost in translation, right? So I think if you can simplify the language in that sense, then we find that it's going to be better.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And I think this is where maybe security teams are challenged to either get the investment or understand how this operates. And I see it a lot where we seem to be investing in towers. So, hey, companies gone cloud first. So therefore, all my security projects are going to be based on, for example, AWS. And then I kind of break it out and go, well, infrastructure as a service, I can do what I did on premise, so I can extend that, and that does this. But it gets treated really separately. And I look at that going, you're just creating a blind spot between the two if we're going to treat them separately. And obviously your approach to looking at it as one entity, because as you said, an attacker, they don't go, oh, that's cloud. It's just, where's the information? Where's it leading me to? And where can I get to is kind of their approach. And I think the way that you've gone about that is certainly something that, I haven't seen a lot of organizations go down that path. And that's why, thanks for sharing it, because I think it's a really important thing as we move forward. I know I've literally just written an article, it should be coming out shortly, talking about this as well, but it's that challenge as an attacker, you don't care where you go to. And I think, we saw it with SolarWinds where they did pivot into things like Office 365. And I think we're going to see it more increasingly as attackers go through. They don't just pick on an infrastructure to go do that. So really do appreciate, sharing that experience with us. Because as you said, you started on your cloud journey in 2016. I think you've probably forgotten more than we need to learn about how we transition to cloud. And it is a challenge. Everyone's faced with it. We've got this new technology coming out that, we need to drive. And I look at your fintech arm is something that most people look as, way ahead of the curve from a technology stance. But at the same rate, when we look at, the telco side and 5G, it's taking you right to the same place.
Yeah.
So
for sure,
management is really tough.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, I'm cloud biased just because based on experience, it is easier to secure, to be perfectly honest. That's why, look, I'm excited for 5G. It's such a big headache trying to secure the old infrastructure. Like I said, look, my EDRs can't work in those, right? But, in the NFVs, in these workloads, look, we've gotten it to work. We can actually load things up, right? So the sooner that we can migrate, that's great. Like for the fintech company, man, container security is great because all of a sudden it's already segmentation. It's magic. I don't need to put in any work anymore, right? So the sooner that we can get there, I think the better. Maybe that's why I think we did not look at cloud as an anti-security thing. I mean, I know that's done already, but in the past it was, right? So to us, we really did embrace it because to us, we did see the value.
Yeah. I really, really do appreciate it. I'm going to leave it open for any other questions that the audience might have. But Anton, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I think it's been really beneficial for everyone on here. And obviously the journey that you guys have been through, I think is incredible. So, thank you for choosing Vectra. I know we've had a hell of a time working with your team. We obviously work very closely with the team in the SOC, and the stories that we hear all the time are great to hear that coming through. So, we really do appreciate it. But if there's any more questions from anyone in the audience, please type them or pop your hand up and ask them away. We do have Anton for a couple more minutes. So, please use this time, guys. There's nothing more coming through. The question was, what solutions do you use for container and virtualization security?
So right now, unfortunately, it's not as rationalized as we would like it to be. So from SaaS and DCA, we do have check marks. CSPM, there's still Palo Alto, so there's still a mix. But we are trying to consolidate that towards what we're trying to call posture management. So on the data center side, for example, we are still in Tenable. So on the cloud side, on the container side, it's still a bit of a mix, right? Yeah, but hopefully as the technologies, at least, the different partners that we have, start to, continue on their acquisition spree because, it is the hotbed, we do see ourselves rationalizing towards one particular stack down the line. If ever just to us, the great thing just with, at least with, container security and, really just DevSecOps is, even absent of technology, I just think that the output and the outcome is much more secure than your legacy stuff, right? So, I'm not too worried about it, but, certainly, right now there's just so many tools out there, but we'd like to rationalize at some point.
Absolutely, and I think we're talking to your team on some of that stuff as well. Most people probably aren't aware that Vectra does quite a lot in that space as we move forward, and that's part of that ongoing journey, as you mentioned, is something that we're working towards.
Yep.
We do have a couple of questions. So one of them was just around, things like why Vectra is a platform over existing investments like, Microsoft Sentinel, leveraging a Splunk investment with, say, Phantom.
Good question. So on the, I think it all boiled down at the time to the, POC POV. Like, look, as much as I'd like to, look, as a Splunk customer, I would have liked to be able to, like I mentioned, right, consolidate towards, at least even their, behavioral analytics platform at the time. But to us, it's ensuring that the challenge with the telco is that there's really just so many segments that are completely blind to us, right? And really just based on the results of the POC and POV, the visibility that we needed was able to, it was Vectra that was able to provide those insights that we were looking for. I mean, I think it's really just, it's a simple answer, but it really is.
Another question actually talks about our direct competitor. So feel free if you don't want to answer this one, Anton. But that question was asked, did you look at one of the competitors, specifically the one that sits on a Formula One car? I'm not going to name them because I don't like saying it out loud. But, basically why did you go with Vectra? Did you do a proof of concept with that other vendor?
Oh, a long time ago. So a long time ago. So it's kind of same thing. Sure, it's interesting, but at the end of the day, like I said, we base the decisions a lot on actual POC and POV. So really the willingness also of Vectra to be able to say, hey, no, okay, you know what? Let's put in as many sensors out there. Let's dump the information. Let's try to find the value. I think that turnaround and quick deployment also is really one of the biggest things too, right? Just us, being able to deploy quickly. Not gonna lie, the partnership with Netpoleon is a big thing, right? A lot of the decisions that we make as far as vendors that we choose is not just also just on the technology stack. It's which partner will be able to help us deliver the boots on the ground needed, just because, like I said, of the complexity of our operations, right? So I mean, Netpoleon in the past has proven as a great partner for us there in a lot of different products. So that's certainly also a big part of the decision-making process.
Excellent. Well, Anton, I think that was all the questions, and I really appreciate the answers, and thank you again for joining us today. It's been great. As I said to you before we jumped on this, I'm really looking forward to doing this face-to-face and physical, seeing the 3D version of you rather than just on the screen at the moment. And to everyone who joined today, I hope you really found some value out of this session. When I look at Globe Technologies and Globe Group, I should say, and what they're delivering and the way they're going about it, I think it's an incredibly mature approach when we look at things like the way we do cloud adoption, the way we help bring in SOAR, the measurements around what you do in a SOC. So, I hope everyone has gained some value out of this today. So I'll hand it back over to the team from Netpoleon. And Anton, is there anything else you wanted to say to anyone that's listening today?
No, not a whole lot. Just, I think it's just really more of ensuring that, when you look at Vectra, when you look at NDR, it's not really supposed to replace anything. It's not supposed to, all at the end of the day, like I said, that's why, if I was the one that came up with the marketing, I guess it would also be that, right? It is really a triad, right? You got to make sure that you're able to utilize the technologies that are out there for you, make them work together, because it's not supposed to overlap in that sense. It's supposed to complement, right? And if you're also having visibility challenges, sensing challenges in certain segments that you can't get the, I guess, involvement that you desire, as far as your SOC coverage is concerned, an NDR is a great solution to be able to fill that gap.
Thank you very much, Anton.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willet, Mr. Anton, and Mr. Chris. So I think it seems like almost we cover all the questions. If you still have any questions, you can contact our team. co-owner. And we hope everyone enjoyed the section. Oh, sorry. We hope everyone enjoyed the section, and could you spare some time to fill out our survey? It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, but it will be of invaluable help to us and keep us improving. Okay, we also will type the link in the chat box as well, so you can click the link from there. Okay. So thank you everyone again. We really appreciate you being here today with us. If you still have any questions and queries about Vectra AI, please do not hesitate to contact us, to contact our respective product manager from the region. We always love to hearing from you. Thanks again for joining us today's section. We hope to see everyone again in our next section.